to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Tactical skills that will help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Here, these are conversations that will differentiate you from your competition. Now, if you don't want to be different than your competition, probably should just go ahead and shut this off.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Like when we audit the mod and do the mod master and give them the actionable items that they can do in order to lower their cost of risk.
This is Power Producers Shop Talk. Production redefined.
Reasonable and what wasn't, and I think that that's spot on. And these people that we're talking with don't necessarily understand what their exposures are and what they can even do about them when they're uncovered. So I do like that what we're able to provide is something tangible, action items that they can do.
Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to Power Producers Shop Talk, episode 16, where we are going to talk about understanding fee for service.
Yes.
And I think it's important to delineate and differentiate and pontificate on, dude.
What about matriculate?
I was watching a little Al Sharpton this morning and I just, actually I was.
Get your day started off pretty light there?
I was. Well, it was inside the framework of Mr. Deeds, so I'll bring the beers. I'll bring the beers. But anyhow, now, I think it's important to understand the difference between fee for service as an agent versus charging broker fees in addition to, like some states are being able to do. That's not what we're talking about here. So before you send me a bunch of mail telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about. I'm just making sure you know what I'm talking about. And I think it's a big deal for agents to be able, piggybacking on what the episode is that actually dropped this morning on disclosing your compensation. I think that agents out there in the middle market really just don't understand what a great tool fee for service is.
I think a lot of them probably don't even know that it's an option.
I don't think they do either. And, so that's why we're going to tell them about it today. And I'm hoping that more than 1% of you actually take action on what we say, because it can change your career.
When you first explained it to me, or when we were first talking about it, I think it had to do with the first example I remember was with the solar company, with the Bulgarians, when you started talking about, fee for service. And I was like, that's the first time I remember hearing about the concept. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. That could definitely work, especially in this situation. It's very situational. You're not doing that.
and then it didn't work.
Well, yeah, it didn't. Yeah, that's true.
But
maybe not the best example, but that's when I remember you talking about it.
All things being considered, they looked like a very stable company on the front end. So
we had no way of knowing.
No, and so we'll get into a little bit about that, because it is one of the pitfalls I want people to understand.
Right.
I'm definitely not leading with that. So I go back to, my career and how I learned about fee for service was really at the first agency that I worked at, because this was the second or third iteration of this agency, after a couple of times of being acquired and then sitting out a non-compete and going back and sitting out a non-compete and going back. And they had represented national and international accounts. And I think it's important to know that that's how the big boys play, right? So if you go to like Marsh, Willis, Aon, any of these places, they're all pretty much fee for service when you start moving further and further up the food chain in terms of account size. And the reason why is because at some point you've built the service platform to handle that account. There's really no reason for you to continue to get paid more and more money just because they're growing, when you're really not doing more work at the same rate at which they're growing, right?
So you just plateau at some point in terms of service.
Yeah, we represented an international restaurant chain that everybody would know if I said the name. And, you're talking about a few millions of dollars in premium And the account was capped at a service fee of about $350,000. If you would have gone in and put that thing on commission, the commissions would have probably been over $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, after watching how the service platform was built out, how we interacted and all of that, there's no reason that they should have been paying $1 million for what we were delivering to them. And it was good stuff that we were delivering, but it just goes to show you there's that point of inflection that when you reach that,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be on commission anymore.
How do you determine what that is? Maybe you'll get into this, in a little bit, but
I think really it goes back to the same thing we always talk about. We want to be viewed like an attorney or an accountant, and they charge by the hour. And it goes into the other podcast that we had recorded about, do you know your hourly rate, or what are you working for an hour?
Right.
Same thing. So when you go in, it's almost like you're building out your budget of saying, okay, this place has X number of units. We know based on experience that it's going to require 1.7 man hours per unit per year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if this is how they figured it out or not, but this is how I would figure it out.
Right.
And say that's how many hours it's going to cost. And then I would say, okay, let's multiply that out by our hourly rate of $250 an hour, or whatever that happens to be, and then multiply that out by the number of locations they have, and you can come up with a reasonably accurate number. I mean, that's how I would take the approach. Is I would look at it and say, okay, let's see what this looks like. But I mean, there's so many things that we can get into in terms of rabbit holes and in making this a competitive advantage, right? So, for example, let's say that I go in, an account has a lot of hair on it, and they're getting ready to get wailed on with a premium increase.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I have heavy lifting. I know I'm going to have to do some work, but I want to have a long-term play with this prospect. I don't want to just get them for a year and call it a day. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll look at it and say, okay, if I were to take commissions on this account this year, it would be $75,000. I'm going to put some skin in the game. I'm going to show them that I want to invest for the long term. And I'm going to explain this to them point blank. I have no problem covering what my compensation is for the agency when I'm talking with anybody. And so I might look at that and say, we're going to do it for $50,000 this year. And people listening might think that I'm nuts, that I'm taking a basically, 30% pay cut, 33% pay cut. But stay with me for a second. I'm going to invest some money into that account this year in terms of my time, and I'm going to start cleaning it up. And we always see some really solid forward progress in year one. Then we see more in year two. Well, what happens most times is by year three, we will have done such a good job that the mod is actually starting to get traction. So workers' comp would go down, okay? And you know how that we set it up, and I'll get into the nuance of what we do with workers' comp in Florida since the rates have the commissions embedded, but everything starts dropping, and all of a sudden you run the calculation, and your commissions would be $30,000 or $35,000. Well, I've already established the baseline that my fee is going to be $50,000. So if we go in and do our job, and the premiums on the policies continue to drop as a result of favorable loss experience, I don't think I should take a pay cut as a result of that. So my worst case scenario is, in the long term, my fee has been established. I'll already make more money on fee than I would have on commission because I set that. And in many cases, I'll actually get a raise on that. Now, I've got a lot of insurance salespeople who haven't quite made the jump to trusted advisor mentally yet. And so they're already thinking to themselves, well, I would just go in and do it for the commission, and it would save that client a lot of money. Well, no, it wouldn't, because you're never going to get into that account at that point. That's part of the deal, right? Is you tell them that you're going to put some of that, take some of your compensation away because you're going to invest in them personally as well. And you're building the loyalty bond over all that time. Yeah, there are people that could come in and take over the insurance relationship and put the commission back in, and overall the cost might be lower, but these people don't have the systems in place to be able to drive the change and maintain that change once they drive it. So I don't ever worry about that. So one of the main reasons why I do the service fee is I can predict it. I know what my cash flow is going to be. And so for me, when opening an agency, that's paramount. If I can go out and sell business on service fee for the first 2 years as opposed to commission and know that I can control when I bill my client, then I can predict my cash flow, and it helps me scale the agency a lot better because I know what I'm invoicing every month and what I should be getting back. The other reason that I like to do it, though, is to establish that benchmark for here's what my compensation is going to be, and then we're never going to go below that. And in fact, it makes sense when you're talking to your client or your prospect to just say to them, look, this is my fee. At some point, I'm going to do such a good job that your commissions or your premiums, rather, are going to drop significantly. And if I were on commission, I would take a pay cut because of that.
Right. It's like the example you always use, especially relating to the workers' comp about how it's backwards. And
right. And so you lay that out for them. Look, I'm going to work really hard for you. But when the premiums drop, I don't expect my compensation to drop. If anything, if I drop your premiums by $150,000, I'm probably going to ask you for $10,000 more a year as a reward for that. So that's one way to look at it. Now, in Florida, it's different because, it's very, very clear in the law that we are not able to take a fee and a commission on the same policy. Now, in other states, you can actually charge broker fees in addition to. It's like Texas is an example. If you have a small E&S policy that you're maybe going to get 50 or $100 of revenue on, like something ridiculous, and you decide, you know what, this isn't going to be worth it, I'm going to charge a $500 broker fee, or I don't even know that that's legal in Texas as far as how much you're allowed to charge, but you're putting extra money on there because you already know I'm not going to make money on this. Another primary example of people who charge fees are agencies that do non-standard auto. So they're writing the 10, 20, 10, PIP only, whatever. And so in some states where you charge broker fees, yeah, you'll place that policy, but then you're also going to charge a fee in addition to what you would get in commission, because an overwhelming majority of those policies cancel within a month or two anyhow. So that's how you actually are able to keep revenue inside your agency. And what's nuts is the people who do that really, really well, they're collecting 3-4 broker fees from the same person every single year because they just keep placing coverage, canceling, placing coverage, canceling. I like it because I think it gives you the opportunity to differentiate yourself, and it starts a conversation that otherwise wouldn't start. So if agents don't know that exists in the middle market, it's highly likely that the clients also don't know that exists in the middle market. And so I can go in and explain why it makes sense. They pay their attorney hourly. They pay their accountant hourly. We are going to be as valuable to their organization as either of those two occupations. And so we want to be paid a service fee that we bill you direct. And you have to line it out and explain to them that what you do is you go to the insurance company and tell them that you want to write their policies net of commission. And when you do, the premiums will drop by the percentage that would have been commission, and that you're just going to bill them directly. They like that. The other thing is, too, it helps them determine, well, I'd rather you bill me quarterly, or I'd rather you bill me monthly, or whatever else, as opposed to whatever the payment plan is from the carrier. So having that conversation is good. But in Florida, the issue that we run into when we do have that conversation is we can't charge a fee and take a commission. And so
on the same policy, like you said.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to very clearly identify what the things are that you're doing to charge a service fee. And if you're including policy negotiation and placement, you have to list those policies on that service fee agreement to be very clear. Look, I'm not taking commission here. So if you're ever audited, people can come in and say, okay, no, that's net of commission. Obviously, that's contemplated in service fee. And so with workers' comp is where it gets a little tricky because the rates are mandated by the state and the commissions are already built in. So if I go to an account and I look at it and it's going to be $50,000 in fee, but $25,000 of that would be contemplated in, I should say $50,000 worth of work, and $25,000 of your compensation is embedded in the workers' comp rates, then I'm only going to bill them for every other policy to be handled inside the service fee, and I'm only going to bill them $25,000 because I don't give them any efficiency by charging them a fee on the workers' comp and telling the carrier to net the commission, because what the carrier is going to say is, okay, well, we won't pay you any commission, but the rates are the same. Well, I want my client to have some level of efficiency. So if my fee is going to be 50 and 25 of it can be contemplated inside of rates that don't get adjusted anyhow, then it makes more sense for me to do that.
Right.
One of the roadblocks or one of the issues that you run into is not getting paid. You know what I mean? That's what we were alluding to just a second ago. You know, we had a great company that we thought was very financially stable. You know, we billed them, a healthy fee, well over $100,000. And essentially they quit paying and now have filed bankruptcy, right? And we have a receivable of over $100,000 from that. By all accounts, going in, very good sector of business, seemed to be financially sound and have plenty of work. I mean, dude, we toured their way of there's no way we would ever know.
Went to their job site, everything checked out. I wanted to ask how you determine, obviously we're doing this for middle market accounts, but how you determine who is a good fit for fee for service. And then I wanted to also talk about the splitting of anything recovered so that we can get back up to maybe where we need to be if we gave them if we took a haircut on the front end.
Yeah, no. So what was the first one?
Just how we decide who we're going to do this for. I mean, it's a case by case scenario. Obviously, it's not like a cookie cutter situation.
Yeah, it's a case by case scenario. I think that it really is not going to be in that lower echelon of middle market. So I would think that maybe the accounts that are the most ripe for picking on a service fee is probably 25 to 50,000 in agency revenue. You get a little bit below 25,000 and it just doesn't make sense. And they're not really going to comprehend, and understand what you're trying to accomplish. And there's not enough meat on the bone. You get a north of 50,000, then these businesses have already been exposed to a service fee arrangement, or somebody has probably pitched it to them. So, that makes it to where it doesn't make sense to. I mean, you could go after that business, but just know you're probably going to have to quote a fee anyhow, as opposed to taking commission on those accounts, because you're dealing with savvier buyers that know how to cap their exposure. So that's what I look at. I look at what kind of businesses it is, how, so one thing I've learned, HVAC companies, not good candidates for a service fee. And the reason why is because, HVAC companies in particular are notorious for having cash flow issues because they don't open their business right. I just had breakfast with a client this morning who runs a very successful HVAC and plumbing company. And we were talking about it. But I mean, my perception after dealing with AC contractors for a number of years now is, if you don't open the company right from the beginning, it'll never get fixed. It can never be corrected because they bury too big of dig too big of a hole for them.
So what do you mean by opening it right? Like in terms of cash flows you're talking?
Yeah. So what happens is, if you think about it, we don't think about this stuff because we don't do it for a living. But once you get hosed by one of them, then you start digging in, right? So, HVAC in Florida is busy from March till the end of September.
Right.
You get into October, November, December, January,
shut my
February.
AC off, bro, for 3 months sometimes. And just
So what happens is these guys are living high on the hog for 4 or 5 months. And, it's like everybody when they get their tax return or their stimulus money, man, they're not buying cheap particle board furniture and DVDs for their entertainment center, right? But I mean, in all seriousness, that's what they're doing, and they're not saving for the lean months. And so what happens is you get into October, November, December, and they're having to lay off staff. They're racking up credit because they don't have cash flow to pay their bills and all of that. And then March comes around and they hit this big wave of cash again. And you would think, oh, well, this is going to solve all the problems. It's not, because what happens is they've dug that hole in credit and gotten behind on everything. So all of the money they're making this season is to pay for everything in the off season. And now you don't have the ability to save anything for the next off season. So it's this never ending cycle of just not knowing how to budget money. and be disciplined with it. So HVAC companies, not going to offer a service fee in most cases unless it's somebody who's already in my book, that has been in my book for a while and has proven they can handle things. I'm just not going to do it for that reason, because there's only been a couple of times in my career where I've gotten hosed. That was one in the HVAC
like that.
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I really don't know.
I'm trying to think, and I don't really. I mean, AC makes sense, especially in Florida, because
the only other thing I could think of would maybe be like agriculture accounts where strawberry season is really big, and then all of a sudden because you deal with a lot of migrant workers too, so they're going to be gone for 2 or 3 months, and then for the other 6 or 7 months, or 8 months or whatever, they'll be working, but that also has issues different topic for a different day, but
right.
Just with payrolls being reported and all of that stuff. The other thing, though, I think that's important for agents to understand is that you can be a lot more creative with how you're compensated with a fee. So it's no secret that we're going into accounts that have mod issues.
Right.
And it's no secret that they have claims issues on other lines of coverage or whatever else, because that's our MO, is to go in and get that fixed. So it makes it a lot more attractive, and it gives the perception that you're 100% on their team. And you have to be to max your compensation, but giving a fee allows you to offer 2 different options. Mm-hmm. And you could go in and say, well, look, here's what it would cost for you to have our suite of services, including the placement of insurance. And this is the fee, and we'll net the commissions out, da-da-da-da-da. But, if you want to be a riverboat gambler, I'm willing to put some skin in the game. And so to give you the example I always use is the egg farm up in North Carolina that I wrote. And we went in there. They had been paying $250,000 a year in commissions. And it was because it was roughly $2.5 million in premium, excess and surplus lines for the majority of it. But in looking at the program, what was driving the majority of the premium was the fact they had $86 million in total insurable values on the property side of the house. And that was business income and just total, business, personal property. They had 5 million chickens. But the construction for a laying facility at that time was frame. It was really crappy construction. So the rates were through the roof. And my philosophy was, look, they do have some issues on comp. They have some issues on fleet. But we don't need $250,000 to drive change, because we actually had boots on the ground in North Carolina, like an hour from where this place was. So we could have somebody there on a regular basis to do the risk management visit.
From the carrier or
No, internal. Somebody that was on staff for us that just happened to live there and was coincidentally
just happened to live in a massive egg farm in North Carolina.
Yeah, and they were having to fly to Tampa to service the accounts down here. So they'd fly to Tampa for a few days during the week, service a bunch of stuff here, then maybe service some of the PEO clients in different parts of the country. But anyhow, we knew we didn't need $250,000, and so when I went in to talk with them at the closing table, I'm not going to get into all the details of the sales presentation and everything, but I walked in. And it was the chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and CEO of a third-generation company. And so we go in and we're setting up to sit down. And I said, just out of curiosity, we introduced ourselves. And I knew who everybody was, but just from a formality. And then I had one of the brokers that we had that was handling the property piece traveled with us to present his piece. And I asked him, I said, when we sat down, is this everybody? And they said, yeah. I said, well, is your risk manager not going to join us? And they said, what do you mean? I said, is your risk manager not going to join us? And they said, what's that? We don't have a risk manager. And I said, well, you're paying $250,000 a year to an agency to represent you. I really hope they're doing more than just placing policies.
Right.
And they said, no, that's all they do. We might see them one time a year outside of renewal.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, my goodness. So our whole premise was, A, we don't need 250.
I can't imagine that there's so much of that goes on, though, too.
It's insane.
Mind-blowing.
It's insane. And so basically we said, look, we don't need 250. We need 87.5 If we can get 87.5 guaranteed, we know that's enough for us to deliver everything we need to do. And by the way, they had averaged $437,000 and some change of out-of-pocket loss costs for the 3 years prior.
Jeez.
So we said 87.5, but if you're willing to let us put some skin in the game and have an opportunity to bonus out, we'll do the same deal, but we'll take 75 in guaranteed compensation. And then for every 100,000 we drop total out-of-pocket loss costs, we get a $10,000 bonus, and we'll cap our total compensation at 100,000, which means your worst case scenario, if you pay me 100, is that you've saved at least 25 or 250,000 bucks.
Right.
It's a no-brainer. And so that's what they did. They said, no, we want to go with that route. Obviously, we want to get the best results we can, and we understand that it's going to be better for us to do that. We're going to we'll pay you more, but PPA paying way less overall. And so we went in that first year, and we were able to get out-of-pocket loss costs dropped to like 36,000. And then the next year it was 13, and then the next year was like
from over 400.
Yeah, and then the next year was like 6. So we go into renewal, and the COO is like, "You guys earned your bonus last year. I got a check for you." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he slid it across the table. We didn't have a contract. We did a handshake deal, and he said, "I want to know if we can do 87.5 this year." And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to have to, because there's no way else for me to bonus out at this point based on the results that we've had." But they liked that, because that at that point we sent them the message that we are so good at what we do that we will put compensation at risk to get you results, because of it. And that works really, really well. Now, what you brought up in terms of what we do to bring money in, that's actually something I probably want to talk about in depth on a different
separate
episode
one.
of
Yeah.
this. But the fundamental philosophy is get into an account early when you're not going to be able to get commissions. And, the other thing too is you can actually look at this from a service fee perspective. But my MO is, if I get into an account 10 or 11 months before renewal, essentially right after the other renewal, I'm willing to invest at some level to help them. But I also need to have some kind of cash flow coming in. So because we lead with the experience mod, many times we're going to have the opportunity to file aggravated inequities or find credits missing from policies or whatever else.
Yep.
And then go back and recover that money. So one way that we can get compensated prior to a renewal is to find money, project what we're going to find, and then invoice them for that, for our share. We will typically pitch it as a 50-50 revenue share, where if we find $100,000 and get that money recovered, they get 50, we get 50. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is, with a service fee though, take that whole found money thing out of it. With a service fee, you can also get paid. So I can go to the CFO and say, look, we are not going to take commission when this policy renews, but I'm going to need you to invest to give us a head start to get everything where it needs to be prior to getting to the insurance transaction. And so we need to bill you a monthly service fee until renewal. And then what you're going to see happen is, once renewal hits, your commissions will be stripped out of the renewal, and you'll recover that money that you've spent ahead of time paying us a service fee. Yeah. So yes, truthfully, you're going to double dip. I mean, the other agent's going to get commission and you're paying us, but that'll go away going forward. And so that works too. But there's a whole lot of stuff you can do inside of, service fee arrangements that you just don't have that flexibility. And again, it gives you the ability to change perception. It gives you the ability to start a conversation that you otherwise are not going to have. Nobody's going to have that conversation with somebody.
Yep. It's good stuff. Solid.
I really don't know what else I can talk about regarding service fee, other than I'm going to put the disclaimer on there one more time. You need to check with your individual state as far as what the regulations are. I can only speak to the state of Florida and tell you how we use them in our agency. So it'll give you some creative inspiration, hopefully, but you still need to check with your DOI and make sure that whatever we're talking about translates to your area. Don't go telling your insurance commissioner that we said it would work, because that's not what I'm saying at all. And with that, I think we wrap up, man. On to the next one.
For sure.
Everybody have a good weekend. Cheers to the freaking weekend.
See you.
Put them up.
You've been listening to Power Producers Shop Talk. You can follow us at the Power Producers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our commercial insurance training course at killingcommercial.com or visit Amazon to pick up a copy of our international best-selling book, The Extra 2 Minutes.